Thank you for watching today. God has a plan and a purpose for you. I hope this message encourages you to love God and your fellow man even more. In this series, I've been asking you to fill out a missing person report on the true Messiah of the New Testament. The point in this exercise is to ask yourself, how many differences between Jesus Christ and the true Messiah are you willing to accept? We've already established that Jesus Christ and the true Messiah have two different names. The true Messiah's name is Yeshua. We've also looked at the birthday and found out that there is little chance that the true Messiah's birthday could or even would have been on December 25th, and most likely that his birthday is in September. Finally, we've established that the goals of Jesus and the true Messiah are totally different. Jesus came to set us free from the Torah, and Yeshua came to make it easier for us to follow the Torah. So far, we've talked about three characteristics that are wrong about Jesus Christ. The question I ask you is, how many wrong characteristics are you willing to accept? Let me put it another way. If your child was taken from you, how many wrong identifying characteristics would you be willing to accept? Let me illustrate with another story. 13-year-old Nicholas Barclay was playing basketball with his friends in San Antonio on June 13, 1994, when he called home for his mother to come and pick him up. Nicholas's mother was asleep at the time and his brother wouldn't wake her. Nicholas never made it home. 3 years later, in October of 1997, his family received the shocking news that he had been found in a youth shelter in Spain. Apparently, Nicholas contacted law enforcement officials and told them he had been abducted, taken to Europe, and forced into a pedophile ring before he managed to escape. Nicholas's sister flew to Spain, identified him, and took him back to Texas. However, his appearance had changed a lot during his 3-year absence. This boy had brown eyes and a French accent, yet somehow he convinced the family that he was their blue-eyed son. He lived with the family, moved into the teenager's bedroom, and even attended a local school. A local police investigator assigned to the case was very suspicious and compared a photo of this boy's ear to Nicholas's ear and discovered that they did not match. A few months later, in February of 1998, the FBI obtained a court order to take the young man's fingerprints and DNA, which were later identified as belonging to someone else. They determined that Nicholas was an imposter and actually a 23-year-old French con artist named Frederick Borden. Here's a family that loved their son so much that they were willing to overlook different color eyes, different color hair, different accents, and different shaped ears. Now, I would never be one to second guess a family's decision on how to approach something like this. But the real question to ask is, how much are you willing to overlook for your love of Jesus Christ? Let's examine and see if the true Messiah changed the Sabbath to Sunday. We all know that God set up the Sabbath for the nation of Israel a long time ago. How long do you suppose God expected the Jewish people to keep the law of the Sabbath? From the teachings of the modern day Christian church and the way that they are presenting Jesus Christ, you would expect that the law of Sabbath would have been done away with after the death of Jesus Christ. Let's examine and see what God has to say about his Sabbath. Then what Yeshua says, then what the New Testament says, and finally look at the example of Paul himself and see how Sabbath was treated in each case. How did God view Sabbath? Exodus 31:13 says, "Speak also to the children of Israel, surely my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations." Sabbaths are for all generations, forever, for all time, non-negotiable. This will never be changed. Then look down a couple verses to verse 16, and again God says, "Therefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations, as a perpetual covenant." It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. Think of this scenario. If God said over and over that the Sabbath would be a sign between him and the children of Israel forever, and then God turns around and sends Jesus Christ to change the Sabbath to Sunday, wouldn't that be playing a cruel joke on the nation of Israel? Wouldn't that be one of the cruelest jokes in the history of mankind? For God to say that you are going to do something forever and expect an entire nation to follow the Sabbath for all time, and then with no warning, send your own son to change it from Saturday to Sunday. God did not and would not do that. Now that we've seen how God views the Sabbath, let's look at how our Messiah views the Sabbath. Luke 4:16, he went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went into the synagogue as was his custom. It was Yeshua's custom to read and worship in the synagogue on the Sabbath. If he hadn't observed the Sabbath, he would have been sinning against God by breaking the fourth commandment. Throughout our Savior's ministry, he continually upheld the seventh-day Sabbath, without ever suggesting or hinting that the observance would be changed to Sunday or done away with altogether. Now that we've seen Yeshua's view, let's move on. Let's look at the New Testament and how it viewed the first day of the week. Now there are only 2 verses that talk about the church and the first of the week. Now to understand our first verse, let's make sure we understand the difference in the Israeli weekly calendar and the Gregorian weekly calendar, the one that most of the world observes today. Now in biblical times, they would count the days from sunset to sunset, and that would be a day. This is the way that God told the nation of Israel to count the days. So the next day would start at around 6 to 8 p.m., depending on the time of year the sun set. Let's read our first verse, Acts 27. Now on the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul, ready to depart the next day, spoke to them and continued his message until midnight. So it makes sense for the disciples to get together after a day of Sabbath in the evening to receive a parting word from Paul. Now notice a few things. Notice that he was leaving the next day on Sunday, our time, and working that day. The first full day of the week was a work day to travel, not a holy day of meeting. Now also note that if it would have been Sunday evening our time, the Jews would have referred to that as the second day of the week, or a Monday. So the only way that this verse makes sense is that they were meeting on Saturday evening our time. So just as a recap, if they were meeting Saturday evening our time, then the next day was not a meeting day, it was a work day. Our second verse, 1 Corinthians 16:2, says this, on the first day of the week, let each one of you lay something aside, storing up as he may prosper, that there be no collection when I come. Here Paul encourages people to lay aside something for an offering that was to come, one that would apparently be sent to Jerusalem for the saints there. There was no mention of a church service or a gathering. Also, they couldn't do these activities on Sabbath because they were required by God to handle money on work days like Sunday, not Sabbath, because preparing food or exchanging money on Sabbath is forbidden by God. Sabbath is wholly set aside in the worship of God and to rest. So let's go to Paul, the one who had the most to say about the law in the New Testament, and see how he treated the Sabbath. In Acts 13:14, from Perga, they went on to Poseidon, Antioch. On the Sabbath, they entered the synagogue and sat down. Paul and his company sat down in the synagogue on Sabbath. After the service, the Gentiles wanted Paul to preach to them the next Sabbath. Acts 13:42. As Paul and Barnabas were leaving the synagogue, the people invited them to speak further about these things on the next Sabbath. Why did they wait an entire week if, according to the modern church, Paul was going to preach again the next day, Sunday? Why didn't Paul correct them and say, hey, listen, you don't have to wait until next Sabbath. Come tomorrow to our Sunday services. When Paul and his company arrived in the next city, Iconium, again they went into the synagogue on Sabbath. The Bible tells us both the Jews and the Greeks were there to hear the word. If the disciples were worshiping on Sunday as well, surely the Greeks would have rather attended the Sunday service. But we find no mention of Sunday. Acts 18 verse 4 says, he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath and persuaded the Jews and the Greeks. Now Paul did this for 1.5 years, teaching the words of God among them. That is about 78 Sabbath days in a row. Again, no mention of Sunday. So if God says that we should keep Sabbath for all generations, and if there's no mention of the Messiah changing the day, and we do not find that the church was meeting on the first day of the week, who changed the day from Saturday to Sunday? In the Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, we read this. Question: why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer: We observe Sunday instead of Saturday because of the Catholic Church, in the Council of Laodicea in AD 336, transferred the day from Saturday to Sunday. The Church substituted Sunday for Saturday because Christ rose from the dead on a Sunday, and the Holy Ghost descended upon the apostles on a Sunday. Question: by what authority did the Church substitute Sunday for Saturday? Answer: the Church substituted Sunday for Saturday by the plenitude of the divine power which Jesus Christ bestowed upon her. Now, according to the Catholic Church, they changed the Sabbath to Sunday because Jesus Christ gave them the power to do it. Why is this message so important? If your Messiah is encouraging you to disobey a command from the Father, the God of the Old Testament, then can your Messiah be the true Messiah? If your Messiah encourages you to disobey the Sabbath command, is he a counterfeit Messiah? Sunday is so ingrained in us that one might even jokingly say, "I'd rather cut off my right arm than lose my Sunday." Matthew 5:30 says this, "And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. Throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell." Let me bring this verse to life with a short story. On April 26, 2003, Aaron Ralston was hiking through Blue John Canyon in eastern Utah. While he was descending, a boulder he was climbing on rolled, crushing his right arm and pinning it against the canyon wall. Ralston had not informed anyone of his hiking plans, so no one would be searching for him. Assuming that he would die, he spent 5 days slowly drinking the small amount of water he had brought and eating his 2 burritos. He tried every way to free his arm, but he could not lift, break, or budge the 800-pound boulder. After 3 days, dehydrated and delirious, Ralston began to mentally prepare to amputate his own trapped arm. When he ran out of food and water on the 5th day, he put a tourniquet on his arm and broke his bones using the boulder as leverage. After breaking his own arm, he cut through the tissue in less than 60 minutes, using only his dull 2-inch pocket knife. After freeing himself, he was able to climb out of the canyon with his one good hand, rappelling down a 65-foot sheer wall, then began to walk the 8 miles back to his car. While hiking out of the canyon, he encountered a family on vacation who gave him food and water and then hurried to alert the authorities. What will you give up for the truth? What is standing in your way from fully accepting the true Messiah of the New Testament? Is it your traditions? Is it peer pressure? What is it that's keeping you from accepting the New Testament Messiah, the one that always directs people to the God of the Old Testament? Remember Deuteronomy 28:1. If you will fully obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all his commands that I give you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations on the earth. All these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. I encourage you, don't let anything stand in between you and the blessings that God has for you. Don't let a false Messiah pull you away from the one true God of our Bible. Be willing to let go of anything so that you can latch on to the truth of God's words and his commandments. To get this entire series on DVD for your home or to give to a friend, be sure to visit my website, chagleaves.com, to purchase this today.